This is America's Mayor Live with Rudy Giuliani. We're in the middle of listening to an absurd press conference with a mentally incompetent president of the United States who began it by announcing that Donald Trump is his vice president. Now he's attempting to answer a very complex question and not answering it. It's another one of his run-on answers. And that was David Sanger's rather softball question from a distinguished journalist like that. What would he do to interrupt the relationship between China and Russia that seems to be developing? He's now describing to us Xi's vision of the world based on his spending more time with Xi Jinping than anybody else has, which I don't know if that's true or not. The answer makes no sense at all. Wouldn't interrupt anything between China and Russia. And of course, if he did it, China would sue him to get their money back. So this is absurd, and Sanger should be ashamed of himself for not challenging his competence. Then he asked him a second question, which we'll see if he can remember, whether Biden can remember the second question, because the last complex question he had to have the reporter repeat it. The second question relates to whether he can go one-on-one with Xi or Putin. And what does he think he's going to say? I mean, that's a ridiculous question. I'm really disappointed in Sanger. I always thought he was more of a serious person than an ass slicker, but he's definitely an ass slicker. I mean, that question is ridiculous, and he's giving a ridiculous answer. Can we get him?
Yeah, we can.
Is he in the middle of the same answer?
As well as help them
do I need the
as a consequence that their ability to fight in Ukraine. The other thing that we talked a lot about.
You're now listening live to Joe Biden's press conference at NATO in Washington, D.C.
Are we still listening to the answer to Sanger's question?
But
the first part?
We need a new industrial policy in the West. For example, we talked about how both the EU as well as NATO has to be able to begin to build their own munition capacity, has to be able to generate their own capacity to provide for weapons and the ability to, it came as a surprise to some of us how we had fallen behind
Tell me how it
in
relates.
terms of the ability to construct new material, new weaponry, new everything from vehicles to weapon systems. And so one of the things
we
that
have
came
more
out of this
vehicles
was,
that will
we're gonna be
separate
meeting
China
again
and
with
Russia.
A number of my colleagues, my European
Sanger, you're
colleagues,
pathetic.
is what do we do to increase the capacity of the West, particularly in Europe and Japan, to be able to generate
They're stinking
kind
blinking.
of ability to produce their own weapon systems, not just for themselves, but to be able to generate that. It's the same. It's what Russia's trying to figure out. That they went to China, and they didn't get the weapons, but then they went to North Korea. But we're going to be in a position where the West is going to become the industrial base for it to be able to the ability to have all the defensive weapons that we need. That was a discussion as well.
President, I'm not sure you answered on whether you would be ready to go deal with Putin and Xi 2 or 3 years from now.
I'm ready to deal with them now and 3 years from now. Look, like I said, I'm dealing with Xi right now and direct contact.
Absolutely pathetic.
I have no good reason to talk to Putin right now. There's not much that he is prepared to do in terms of accommodating any change in his behavior. And but there isn't any world leader I'm not prepared to deal with. But I understand the generic point is Putin ready to talk? I'm not ready to talk to Putin.
Point. The point is, can you talk to anybody?
To change his behavior
And make more sense than this.
Look, Putin's got a problem. First of all, in this war that he is supposedly have won, and by the way, I think, don't hold me to the exact number, but I think that Russia had 17.3% of Ukraine that they conquered. Now it's 17.4. I mean, in terms of percentage of territory. they've not been very successful. They've caused horrible damage, loss of life, but they've also lost over 350,000 troops, military, killed or wounded. They have over 1 million people, particularly young people with technical capability, leaving Russia because they see no future there. They've got a problem. But what they do have control of is they are very good at
answering
controlling
the question if he's
and
prepared to
running
talk to Trump.
the public outcry
I mean,
that relates to how they
is he
use
prepared to talk to Trump?
mechanisms to communicate with people. They lie
But how
like
is he
hell through the
prepared
constituencies.
to talk to
They lie like hell about what's
Putin or
going
Xi
on.
or anybody else?
And
I don't think he really remembers
the
the
idea
question.
that we're going to be able to fundamentally change Russia
And
in
the
near
idea that
term
Putin hasn't been
is
successful,
not
he's
likely.
got exactly
But
what
one
he
thing
wanted.
for certain, if we allow Russia to succeed in Ukraine, they're not stopping in Ukraine. I recommend, I know you know this because you've written about it, read Putin's speech after they moved in, what it was all about in Kyiv. It wasn't about just, anyway, read what his objective is. And anyway, but so I think that I'm prepared to talk to any leader who wants to talk, including if Putin called me and wanted to talk. Last time I talked to Putin was trying to get him to work on an arms control agreement related to nuclear weapons in space.
Yeah, that worked well.
That didn't go very far.
No.
So my point is, I'm prepared to talk to anybody, but I don't see any inclination. There is an inclination on the part of the Chinese to keep in contact with me because they're not sure where this all goes. And look what's happened in Asia. We have strengthened the Asian Pacific area more than anybody else has. We just put together with, today I brought on, I asked our NATO allies that we bring on the group from the South Pacific, Australia, New Zealand, Japan, Australia. I already mentioned Australia. And I met twice now, I think, with the 14 leaders of the Pacific Island nations. And we've slowed down what's going on there. We've slowed down.
Yeah, we've
China's
slowed down,
reach.
Joe, quite a bit.
But there's a lot of work to do. This is a moving target, and I don't take it lightly. Sam from NPR.
NPR.
Oh, you know he got that
Thank you,
name
Mr.
wrong, too.
President. Asma Khalid with NPR. I have
What's
two
the name?
questions. Earlier, you spoke about the ceasefire plan between Israel and Hamas. We're now looking at 10 months of war, and I'm curious if there's anything that you feel personally you wish you would have done differently over the course of the war. And then secondly, if I may, I wanted to ask you about your presidential campaign. I remember covering your campaign in
Stop
2020.
asking him two
and
questions. He's going to
There was
forget.
a moment where you referred to yourself as a, quote, bridge candidacy, a transition to a younger generation of leaders.
Remember the second question
I
yet.
want to understand what changed.
Two things. Let's go back to when you talked about would I have changed anything that's happening with Israel and the Palestinians and the Palestinian movement. The answer is, as you recall, from the very beginning, I went to Israel, but I also got immediate contact with Sisi in Egypt. I met with the King of Jordan. I met with most of the Arab leaders to try to get a consensus going as to what had to be done to deal with getting more aid and food and medicine into the Gaza Strip. And we pushed it really hard. And Israel occasionally was less than cooperative, number one.
Oh, really?
The Israeli War Cabinet, I've been dealing with Israel since Golda Meir. Some of the reporters around here come here all the time have heard me say this. The first time I met with Golda Meir, I sat across from her at her desk, and her assistant was Rabin sitting next to me. That's how far back I go. I know Israel well, and I support
That's the
Israel.
problem.
But
You've been
this war
wrong on it
cabinet
from the
is one of
beginning.
the most conservative war cabinets in the history of Israel. And there's no ultimate answer other than a two-state solution here. And so what was able to be done in terms of the plan I put together was it would be a process for a two-state solution. And we get the Arab nations to, particularly from Egypt all the way to Saudi Arabia, to be in a position where they would cooperate in the transition so that they could keep the peace in Gaza without Israeli forces staying in Gaza. The question has been from the beginning, what's the day after in Gaza? And the day after in Gaza has to be, the end of the day after has to be no occupation by Israel on the Gaza Strip, as well as the ability for us to access, get in and out as rapidly as you can, all that's needed there. I've been disappointed that some of the things that I put forward have not succeeded as well, like the port we attached from Cyprus. I was hopeful that would be more successful. But
230 million
that's
down the
why
drain.
when I went to Israel immediately after the massacres that occurred at the hands of Hamas, the one thing I said to the Israelis, and I met with the War Cabinet and with Bibi, don't make the same mistake America made after bin Laden. There's no need to occupy anywhere. Go after the people who did the job. You may recall, I still get criticized for it, but I was totally opposed to the occupation and trying to unite Afghanistan. Once we got bin Laden, we should have moved on, because it was not no one's ever going to unite that country. I've been over every inch of that, not every inch, the entirety from the poppy fields all the way to the north. I said, don't make the same mistake we made. Don't think that's what you should be doing, is doubling down. We'll help you find the bad guys, Sinwar and company. And all this criticism about I wouldn't provide when the weapons they needed. I'm not providing them 2,000-pound bombs. They cannot be used in Gaza or any populated area without causing great human tragedy and damage. But remember what happened when you had the attack on Israel with rockets and ballistic missiles. I was able to unite the Arab nations as well as Europe, and nothing happened. Nothing got hurt. It sent an incredible lesson to what was going on from the Middle East. So there's a lot of things, in retrospect, I wish I had been able to convince the Israelis to do. But the bottom line is we have a chance now. It's time to end this war. Doesn't mean walk away from going after Sinwar and Hamas. And if you notice, you know better than most, there is a growing dissatisfaction on the West Bank from the Palestinians about Hamas. Hamas is not popular now. And so there's a lot of moving parts. I just have to keep moving to make sure that we get as much done as we can toward a ceasefire, and get those. And by the way, look at the numbers in Israel. I mean, my numbers are better in Israel than they are here. But then again, they're better than a lot of other people here too. But anyway.
Bridge candidacy in 2020, you referred to yourself as being a bridge candidate for a younger, fresher generation of Democratic leaders, and I wanted to know what changed.
What changed was the gravity of the situation I inherited in terms of the economy, our foreign policy, and domestic division. And I think, I won't put words in anybody's mouth, most presidential historians give me credit for having accomplished more than most any president since Johnson and maybe before that to get major pieces of legislation passed. And what I realized was my long time in the Senate had equipped me to have the wisdom to know how to deal with the Congress, to get things done. We got more major legislation passed that no one thought would happen. And I want to finish it, to get that finished. If tomorrow, if we had a circumstance where there was a lineup and I hadn't inherited what I did and we just moved things along, anyway, it's going to change.
Last question.
Haley Bull, Scripps. Or no, Josh Weingrove, I'm sorry, was the next one. I'll do two more questions.
Thank you, Mr. President. Many of your colleagues, Democrats on the Hill, are watching tonight as they assess what they want to say about your candidacy. I'm wondering how you're thinking of this right now. It seems like your answer is clear, but they're watching how things go tonight, tomorrow in Michigan, next week in Texas and Nevada. Are you thinking that way about how the next week or two goes would inform your
Am I using that way, you say?
Are you thinking that way about how the next 2 weeks go? Will that affect your decision, or are you fully determined on running in November as the party's nominee?
I'm determined on running, but I think it's important that I allay fears by let them see me out there. Let me see them out, for the longest time it was, Biden's not prepared to sit with us unscripted. Biden's not prepared to, anyway. And so what I'm doing is, and I've been doing, I think we've done over 20 major events from Wisconsin to North Carolina to demonstrate that I'm going out in the areas where we think we can win, where we can persuade people to move our way, or people are already there.
Anyway.
Yeah, look, the other thing is, we have the most extensive campaign organization of anybody's had in a long, long time. We have well over 1,000 volunteers knocking on doors, making phone calls, making tens of thousands of phone calls. We have headquarters, I forget exactly how many, I don't want to cite a number and then find out I'm off, but we have scores of headquarters in all the
He hasn't
the
remembered
toss-up
one
states.
second question.
We're organized, we're moving, and that's awful hard to replace in the near term. And so, and here's the other thing. I was in the Senate a long time. Very proud of what I've done in the Senate. I was chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee for a long time, and I was chairman or ranking member and chairman of the Judiciary Committee. I'm going to be going down to the Johnson Library. Anyway, I'm going to be going around making the case of the things that I think we have to finish.
He says anyway, whenever he is losing his train of thought.
Or
He doesn't know what day he's going to the Johnson
on
Library.
Civil rights, civil liberties,
Yeah,
women's rights.
what relationship have that in it?
Control guns, not girls. I mean, the idea, we're sitting around, this is where Kamala is so good as well. We're sitting around. More children are killed by a bullet than any other cause of death. The United States of America. What the hell are we doing?
Yes.
What are we doing? We got a candidate saying, promised the NRA, don't worry, I'm not going to do anything. I'm not going to do anything. You got a Supreme Court that is what you might call the most conservative court in American history. This is ridiculous. There's so much we can do still, and I'm determined to get it done. It's about freedom. And by the way, I'll end this.
By the way.
Well, I'm not going to do that. Haley has to come up too. But
What?
I remember I made a speech on democracy in Philadelphia at Independence Hall. And I'm not being critical, just observing. The bulk of the press said, what the hell is he talking about that for? Democracy. You did. Democracy is not an issue. Democracy is not an issue. Except the polling data showed 60% of the people knew I was right, thought I was right. I'm not asking you a question. You don't have to answer, obviously. But do you think our democracy is under siege based on this court? Do you think democracy is under siege based on Project 2025? Do you think he means what he says when he says he's going to do away with the civil service, eliminate the Department of Education, make sure, I mean, we've never
What
been
does the
here
Department
before.
of Education have to do
That's
with
the other
democracy?
reason why I didn't, you say, hand off to another generation. I've got to finish this job. I've got to finish this job because there's so much at stake.
We've had some discussions over the past few days with your press secretary about the question of health exams. And you said you take a cognitive test every day in this job. Are you open to taking another physical or test before the election? Governor Whitmer of Michigan, for instance, said it wouldn't hurt to take a test.
Well, look, two things. One, I've taken 3 significant and intense neurological exams by a neurologist. In each case, as recently as February. And they say I'm in good shape, okay? Although I do have a little problem with my left foot because it's not as sensitive because I broke my foot and didn't wear the boot. but, but, but I'm good. I'm tested every single day about my neurological capacity to do decisions I make every day. You talk to my staff, all of you talk to my staff. Sometimes my staff talks a lot. But the fact of the matter is, I don't think you have them telling you that all the major ideas we've undertaken haven't been in part initiated by me. I remember when the staff and I said, I'm going to go to South Korea, we're going to get the chip. What are you doing? I'm going to get Japan and Korea back together again after essentially having hostilities toward one another since the end of World War II. I'm going to move and see that we can expand it. You know,
Look at those eyes.
the only thing age does is help you with it, creates a little bit of wisdom if you pay attention. And so the point I'm making is, I think it's important
I
that
think the juice is running out.
if the neurologist tells me he thinks I
If?
need another exam, and by the way, I've laid every bit of the record out. Hadn't
He hasn't even finished that.
thing.
He's
Don't
falling
ask Trump
apart
for his, okay?
because he's going on too long.
I laid it all out. And every single day I'm surrounded by good docs. If they think there's a problem, I promise you, or even if they don't think it's a problem, they think I should have a neurological exam again, I'll do it.
Yes, we all think you
No
should
one's
have a
suggesting that
neurologist.
to me
A
now.
cognitive
And
exam.
I'll ask you another question. No matter what I did, no one's going to be satisfied. Did you have 7 docs? Did you have 2? Who'd you have? Did you do this? How many times did you? So I am not opposed if my doctors tell me I should have another neurological exam, I'll do it. But that's where I am. Haley Bull, Scripps.
Thank you, Mr. President. You said you're making decisions on a day-to-day basis when it comes to support for Ukraine. Does that mean you have not closed the door on further considering lifting restrictions for U.S.-made weapons inside Russia? And if I may, your convention is coming up where your delegates are pledged to make you the official nominee. If they have second thoughts, are they free to vote their conscience?
Obviously, they're free to do whatever they want, but I get overwhelming support. Overwhelming support. I won, I forget how many votes I won in the primary. Overwhelming. And so tomorrow, if all of a sudden I show up at the convention, everybody says, we want somebody else, that's the democratic process. It's not going to happen.
Not going to happen. They vote for someone else?
Sure. Look. I'll end this with this.
He forgot the
I
second
served
question.
in the Senate a long time. I understand the impetus of candidates running for local office and whether they think the topic can help them or not. In my state of Delaware, which was a very, at least it was a red state when I started, in terms of we now talk red and blue. I don't recall most of the Democratic presidents winning my state when I was a candidate. The truth of the matter is I understand the self-interest of every candidate. If they think that, running with Biden at the top is going to hurt them, then they're going to run away. I get it. But so far, go and look at the polling data in their states. Look at the in-depth, and by the way, I think you'd all acknowledge, and you're all experts. I'm not being solicitous about the president. You're experts on this stuff. How accurate does anybody think the polls are these days? I can give you a series of polls where you have likely voters, me versus Trump, where I win all the time. When the unlikely voters vote, he wins sometimes. The bottom line is all the polling data right now, which I think is premature because the campaign really hasn't even started. I mean, it hadn't started in earnest yet. Most of the time, it doesn't start till after September, after Labor Day. So a lot can happen. But I think I'm the best I believe I'm the best qualified to govern. And I think I'm the best qualified to win. But there are other people who could beat Trump too. But it's awful start from scratch. And, we talk about, money raised. We're not doing bad. We got about $220 million in the bank. We're doing well. So with that, you have any want to follow up on any of that you just asked me?
Yes. You earlier explained confidence in your vice president.
Yes.
If your team came back and showed you data that she would fare better against former President Donald Trump, would you reconsider your decision to stay in the race?
No, unless they came back and said, there's no way you can win. Me. No one's saying that. No poll says that. Okay. Thanks.
This ends tonight's press conference. Thanks, everybody. This concludes.
Respectfully, earlier you misspoke in your opening answer. You referred to Vice President Harris as Vice President Trump. Right now, Donald Trump is using that to mock your age and your memory. How do you combat that criticism from tonight?
Listen to him.
This concludes tonight's press conference. Thank you, everybody. Thanks, everyone.
Walk up. Oh, he made it. Did not get lost.
President Joe Biden walking off the stage at this historic NATO summit. The president holding his first.
Basically, the only thing that didn't happen, it didn't fall down on the way out. That should be conclusive proof that he is incapable of being president of the United States, and that it is not a political matter, that it has to do with the national security of the United States of America. Look, we're not George Clooney. We're not a bunch of sneaky backstabbing traitors. I mean, here's a guy that was at a June 15th Hollywood gala for him, where it was quite obvious that he was completely non-compass menace. Got to be helped off the stage. And for days, he kept his mouth shut about it. Now it's conclusive proof that the president of the United States doesn't know who he is or what he's doing. But Clooney kept it to himself when it was in the self-interest, not of the United States. The United States doesn't even count, but in his own self-interest and his pathetic wife, who's persecuting Israel. But that's what they're all about. Every single one of them is part of this cover-up. This man is clearly incapable of being a babysitter for your child. God forbid. From the very beginning, he actually doesn't remember that he said Vice President Trump. And it looked to me like they were trying to give him a chance to straighten that out, although I don't know how he would have. At the very, very beginning, he began by saying that his vice president was Donald Trump. Now, why do we go on with it? What's the point of going forward with it? What else does he have to do to prove to us that he doesn't have the mental capacity to govern the most complicated country on earth at a time of two major wars, both of which he helped to cause?
Here's this.
To be vice president, that I think she was not qualified to be president. I wouldn't have picked
On if he weren't the president, and if Trump were the president. It didn't go on when Trump was the president. The only time Putin is attacked is when he's had a patsy in the White House, and he's got a patsy in the White House right now. And he's got to be sitting back. Putin's got to be sitting back saying we're crazy. So does Xi and the rest. We're crazy. Toward the end, he was going off. Basically going off to the crazy house. And the answers were disjointed, run-on answers, bore very little relationship to the questions. At no time could he remember the second question on his own without help. Each time he needed help getting to the second question. The reality is that I would think this is the last nail in the coffin. We could go on and dissect further parts of this, but Is it really necessary if you watched it? My goodness. Well, let's take a break and catch up on the advertisements that we have, and we'll be right back. I don't really know. There's not much to say. He already just said it, didn't he? My goodness. And if I put my name on something, I truly believe in it. Today, I'm thrilled to introduce you to something I'm incredibly proud of. My own brand of organic specialty coffee, Rudy Coffee. Believe me when I say it's the best coffee you'll ever try. It's smooth, rich, chocolatey, and gentle on your stomach. It's so good, I even recommend drinking it black. It comes in 3 varieties, including what I promise is the best decaf you'll ever have. You can order now by scanning the QR code on your screen or by visiting rudy.coffee. By supporting Rudy Coffee, you're not just treating yourself to exceptional coffee, you're also supporting our cause, the cause of truth, justice, and American democracy. You'll also be supporting the Call to Action nonprofit, which is devoted to helping veterans and first responders. So you can make a difference and taste the difference by ordering today at rudy.coffee. Here we are, pretty much at the beginning of the process here at this pristine, I call it a laboratory. It's not like a factory, it's like a hospital. This is the beginning of the process for roasting. Deep grain, very good quality. Most people don't use this quality. We deal with small farmers because they like to know who we're dealing with. They give us the highest quality, all organic, non-GMO. You should know all Arabica beans. No Robusto, all Arabica. They're going to go into the roaster and it'll get roasted for about 20 minutes or so. Oh my goodness, look at these. My goodness. You're going to want to specially order these. This is what goes into Rudy's Coffee. Well, it was a big boy press conference, but he didn't bring his big boy pants. That's for sure. Of course, you can't miss the number one gaffe of the night, which is, as I said, like fumbling in the first play of the game, and that is when he refers to his vice president as Vice President Trump, and does not know he did it. Now, earlier in the day, he confused Zelensky and Putin, but he corrected himself. But let's listen to the fumble on the first play of the Super Bowl.
To be vice president, that I think she was not qualified to be president. I wouldn't have picked Vice President Trump to be vice president, that I think she was not qualified to be president.
Now, I didn't make that up. You tell me that man has a functioning brain. He doesn't know what he's saying, because could you make a mistake and say Vice President Trump? Of course. But wouldn't you know it if you did? You'd know it right away. I mean, that's glaring. Even the Zelensky-Putin thing is pretty glaring.
Let's play that.
But he caught that one.
The president of Ukraine, who has as much courage as he has determination. Ladies and gentlemen, President Putin. And now I want to hand it over to the president of Ukraine, who has as much courage as he has determination. Ladies and gentlemen, President Putin.
Well, I don't think it's fair, because I do think he didn't he correct it, Ted?
Yeah, so that clip was cut. It took a second, though. It wasn't right. The media is saying right away. It wasn't immediate. It was like he started to walk away, and then he walked back and said,
well, maybe somebody warned him.
Zelensky.
See, the point that I'm trying to make is he has very often done this. And the thing that's really very damaging and telling about it, which the doctors tell me, he doesn't know he did it. Like he has more than a few times referred to her as President Harris. I'd say I can think of 4 or 5. I don't never remember him correcting himself. In other words, I don't remember him saying, and I'd like to now present President Harris. Oh, I'm sorry, Vice President Harris. Yeah, that's what a normal brain would do most of the time. Most of the time, it's just the opposite. And I'm not, I'm telling you what doctors tell me. You have a normal brain. You say, I want to present President Harris. Your normal brain hears that and says, no, 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 I just made a mistake. Vice President Harris. Or Zelensky Putin. I want to present President Putin. Oh, gosh, I mean Zelensky. That's a functioning normal brain that made a mistake. I want to present President Putin, and out walks Zelensky. And you don't correct it. Or you walk away and somebody else has to tell you to correct it. Or I wouldn't have selected Vice President Trump if I didn't think she was qualified. And no recognition that you said Trump. Now, what does he have to do to show you that he's mentally ill? What else? Start babbling like a baboon? Which he almost did a few times. I mean, some of those answers, almost impossible to follow them. They went from one question to another, one subject to another subject to another subject to another subject. I never recall him once remembering the second question, ever. Ever. And it had to be repeated for him. Which has got to say he's suffering from the classic short-term memory loss, traumatic short-term memory loss. And then his answers themselves were substantively idiotic, like no appeasement of Russia. If you recall, in the lead up to the Afghan war, to the withdrawal from Afghanistan, rather, constantly showing like a rush to get out of there so quickly without any concern for the safety of the civilians. And then an unwillingness to really take care of our people. So Putin had to register that, right? But Putin didn't just rely on that. Putin is an evil man, but an intelligent evil man with a functioning brain, unlike our president. So he tested him. If you will go back and listen to my podcasts and broadcasts, you'll see that I said it then. He was probing him. Constantly probing him, putting troops on the border, first on the eastern border of Ukraine, then on the northern border near Belarus, or in Belarus. And he kept threatening. And Biden kept saying, don't, but then would go on, and every one of those times to use the same phrase, which became monotonous after a while. Oh, but no boots on the ground, 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 no boots on the ground. If he said it once, he said it 200 times. So now to a rational, systematic analyst like Putin, he has gone beyond what he has to convince you that he's not a threat. That whatever's going to happen, he's going to give them arms, you're going to give them money, you're not going to give them troops, and therefore, who cares? And then, just to really top it off, just in case Putin missed it, he actually said at one point, probably because of his non-compos mentis state, that if it were a small invasion, it wouldn't matter. Well, that was completely idiotic and insane. So if Putin needed to have like an exclamation point on the no boots on the ground, he just got it. And then he invaded. just like he invaded under Bush when Bush was extraordinarily weak and had an unfortunate difference in his foreign policy apparatus. And number two, I mean, it was an easy decision under communist-trained Obama after the, what was it, 10 or 12 red lines that Syria shouldn't cross, which they did, and he didn't respond at all. I mean, by the 7th or 8th, Putin had to say to himself, I can push this guy all around the globe. And he did. And to say that Putin hasn't succeeded, gee, tell that to the people who live in the bridge that now exists between Russia and Crimea. Now, has he succeeded in his ultimate objective, which we assume is to take all of Ukraine, the entire thing, and put it back under Russia, Soviet? It's my view, if you read Putin carefully, and watch him carefully, that his goal is not to recreate the Soviet Union necessarily. Not that it's any better, but I mean, his goal, but you have to understand. You have to understand your adversary. We have a president that doesn't, actually, we have a president that wouldn't have had the intellectual ability to understand our adversary before he became demented. Because that's when Gates told you he never got a decision about foreign policy right. He's a profoundly stupid man who always makes the wrong judgment. Always. But Putin, if you read Putin, Putin is more of a Russian nationalist than he is a Soviet communist. I mean, he's not a dictator. He wants to recreate the Russian Empire. I think he wants to be a czar, not Khrushchev. I don't think he wants to be Khrushchev and Stalin. I think he wants to be, Putin the First. To him, those are the territories he's concentrating on, the territories that rightly or wrongly Russia annexed or Russia felt was part of Russia, or there are Russians who believe that Ukraine is part of Russia. There are Ukrainians who believe it isn't, and there are Ukrainians that are somewhere in the middle of all that. And so we have a nationalistic thing going on here. The same thing would be true of Belarus and a couple of other of those areas. It would not be true, let's say, of Poland, that was never a part of Russia, but part of the Soviet colonies. Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, closer. Somewhere in between, not as clearly a part of Russia in his mind, in Putin's mind, as Ukraine or Belarus, but not as separated as Poland and what used to be Czechoslovakia and what used to be Yugoslavia. So understand his mind and understand what he's trying to do. The minimum goal that he had in this invasion was to complete a land bridge between Russia and Crimea. So you don't have to go through Ukraine to get to Crimea, and you control the entire access to the sea along that bridge. He's accomplished that. He hasn't accomplished it as completely as he wanted. He wanted to have it go up as far north as Kharkiv, and he can't seem to be able to capture Kharkiv, thank God. I happen to have a real soft spot for that city, second largest in Ukraine. Although he's attempting, I think in the latter days here, if they are the latter days of this war, we don't know. He's trying to, it seems to me, he's trying to acquire as much territory as he can so that he'll have territory to give away when he's got to sit at the bargaining table, which I believe he's ready for. I don't think he's ready to give up big portions of Ukraine because he doesn't think that Ukraine can take big portions back from him. And he never did answer the question, if he understood it. I'm talking about Biden now, about the limitations that he's placed on Ukraine. Either was the last question or the penultimate question in which he was asked about the limitations. And who knows if he was trying to avoid it or he didn't understand it. Could be either or both. Because as his speaking went on, he became more and more unhinged from the subject. There was one answer, which I can go back over, where he went into about 5 different subjects having nothing to do with the question that he was asked, because I don't think he remembered the question he was asked. And he certainly didn't remember the second question that was asked of him. So, Ted, you listened to the whole thing with me. Why don't we take a short break and we'll see what you have to say, and anybody sending anything in.
Yeah, we want to know your comments below.
Yeah, what do you think? I mean, everybody, I'm sure most people watch this stupid thing. And,
yeah, but give us your analysis.
I mean, for purposes of figuring out, is he, fit to be president? The minute he said Vice President Trump, and a minute went by and he didn't correct it, you got to figure, turn it off, get rid of him. I mean, that's the way I would look at it.
Give us your thoughts below. Will this press conference expedite or keep him in there longer?
Okay. Well, you think about that.
Yeah,
and we'll be right back.
Right back.
Try to sell you something.
We're having the biggest sale ever on overstock clearance and brand new products. For example, save 60% on our Goose Down comforters, the best comforters ever. They go perfectly with our MyPillow bed sheets and duvet covers. Save 25% on our brand new kitchen towels. They're made with the same technology as our famous My Towels. Our initial quantities are extremely low, so get them now before they go. Our seasonal flannel sheets are finally in. You save up to 50% and they sell out fast every year, so order now. They're truly the best flannel sheets you'll ever sleep on. Or save up to 80% on all our clearance items. And this is where it gets even better. For a limited time, your entire order ships absolutely free. So go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use that promo code to get deep discounts on all MyPillow products. And for a limited time, your order ships absolutely free.
Yeah. Well, this is Rudy Giuliani, and we're back with America's Mayor Live, and we're discussing the Big Boy press conference. And the question is, did he put on his big boy pants? And I would say, no, I'm not even think he had a diaper on. And I think he blew it on answer 102 whenever he said, I picked Vice President Trump and she was qualified. I would say from then on, it was over. Because he never at any time acknowledged the mistake, because he didn't know he made it, which is what his dementia is all about. And even when given a chance by, was it Acosta at the end? Who asked him that?
Peter Alexander, NBC News.
Oh, asked him that, okay. And asked him about it, almost as if, Trump was unfairly attacking him on it. And he said, well, listen to Trump. Well, but we all listen.
All right, let's play the clip.
This concludes.
Respectfully, earlier you misspoke in your opening answer. You referred to Vice President Harris as Vice President Trump. Right now, Donald Trump is using that to mock your age and your memory. How do you combat that criticism from tonight?
Listen to him.
This concludes tonight's press conference. Thank you.
Well, I will accept that. We will listen to him. What does Trump have to say? That Biden is non-compos mentis, right? Yeah. Trump is right. Throughout the debate, I mean, this is a day on which he skirted by and confusing Zelensky and Putin. And the way he gets by on it is he corrected it. But I didn't see that, the correction part. I saw the confusion part. So maybe we can dig out the correction when how does he go about correcting himself?
Yeah, I'll get that.
Here's you want to play doctor. Here's the difference. I explained it before. Any of us can misspeak. It's part of the human condition. The most brilliant people, in fact, has nothing to do with IQ or even mental acuity. You can just make a mistake. Get two names confused. You get two countries confused. A functioning, sharp mind picks up the mistake because you listen to yourself. Most of us, as we're talking, also listen to what we're saying. His problem, which I've known about for 4 years because the doctors explained it beautifully to me way back then, is he has such terribly profound short-term memory loss that he gets confused in the middle of sentences, in the middle of talking. Like now, he would forget that he's addressing himself to his memory loss. And he would start to talk about how he was able to get Korea and Japan together. Well, nobody's asking about Korea and Japan. It's irrelevant to the subject. And the reason he goes to Korea and Japan is because his train of thought has stopped. And then there are words that he keeps repeating when that happens. I wish there would be a doctor. I guess that Dr. Potts was pretty brave to do it. And they all get criticized because they say, well, you can't diagnose it without examining him. But what we are talking about is cognitive loss of cognitive ability. And I've had any number of doctors that tell me you can do this based on videotapes, because he's you can go back. Oh, you can go back 10 years ago and listen to him. You listen to him now, and you're listening to two different men. Even his affect, which is a very big part of a diagnosis, his affect is a giveaway. He has the affect of, sometimes he looks like like there's nothing going on in his brain. It happened tonight any number of times, and particularly toward the end. He looks, the last one he covered up by smiling, but he didn't seem like he really.
Here's another clip. He does kind of correct himself here, Mayor. You tell me if that's I think that's a real position here at the end. Kind of help us out here, Mayor.
Good.
Commander-in-Chief, the Chief of Staff of the military, as well as the Secretary of Defense and our intelligence people. I'm following the advice of my Commander-in-Chief, the Chief of Staff of the military, as well as the Secretary of Defense and our intelligence.
I would give him the benefit of the doubt on that. I mean, you could say he's talking about three different people. This mythical commander-in-chief, that's him, by the way, the Chief of Staff of the military and his Secretary of Defense. But I think inserting my Chief of Staff of the military was intended to correct Commander-in-Chief. So we'll give him the benefit of the doubt on that one. But I mean, what he should have said, I mean to say, to make it clear, so it is possible. I mean, look, there are so many. What do we have to pick on that one for? Right?
Yeah.
But what I would like to see, really, for purposes of
I'm digging it up right now.
Yeah, I'd like to see how he corrects. He really doesn't correct that. He just goes on to say, my Chief of Staff of the military. I mean, that's the head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, I imagine he's talking about, right? I mean, that's what those of us with big boy pants would have referred to it as. The question is, did he have him on or off when he was given that answer?
Yeah, we'll have that in about 5 minutes, Mayor.
He did get the name wrong for the NPR reporter. Now, I don't know if he just didn't read it right or he had the wrong name or when he was asked if he would change anything, he really didn't answer that. He went off on Israel is less than cooperative. He attacked Israel and the right-wing Israeli government. Couldn't remember the second question that was asked. And that was the question about whether, how did he deviate from being a bridge candidate to become such a divisive, well, she didn't ask that, but she was asking him, basically what happened to being a bridge candidate. And that was NPR. I mean, geez. I mean, that's like having your kid throwing your softballs at a pitch at a softball game. NPR. I mean, that's just about as close as you're going to get to Pravda as we have in America. National public radio supported by you and despises anything Republican or right wing. Then there's always an expression that people who have short-term memory loss, I am told by doctors again, that they keep repeating, well, and how many times did he say, well, anyway, Ted?
Yeah.
About 4 or 5 times toward the end when he was what do they call it? Sundowning?
And
sundowning usually happens to elderly people in hospitals.
What's sundowning? That's a new term. What's sundowning?
Sundowning, it can happen to my mother at one point, and she had 10 more years of complete lucidity, about 8 years. My mother went to the hospital for an operation. Might have been her bypass operation. She had a bypass operation at 80 years old.
Wow.
And she was in the hospital for a while. And she started to get like that. I mean, she would say irrelevant things and strange things, and she was always sharp with attack. And I was very worried about her, and the doctor said, no, this is sundowning. It happens to elderly people when they go in the hospital, particularly if they're not used to being in the hospital. My mother hadn't been in the hospital for like 30 years before this happened. And when she came out, within a day, she was perfectly fine. And she was perfectly fine until about 2 months before she died. It's called sundowning, and it happens in hospitals because elderly people lose track of where they are, what time it is. Very often you'll see if an elderly person is in the hospital, they'll have a big clock up and a day, and they'll have a day. It'll say, it'll say the day and the date and the time, and they'll be reminded that the day has changed because they can become confused from a change in habitual circumstances. That's what I've always understood sundowning to be. Now, it may be more profound than that when it leads to a permanent illness. It may not always be temporary. The case of my mother, and I can think of 2 other friends that had a similar situation where they become somewhat disoriented. One of them during COVID, becoming somewhat disoriented in the hospital, and then just went away. I mean, the mind is a strange thing. And in his case, if it weren't for the fact that he's such a horrible crook and traitor, you'd feel sorrier for him. I mean, in a way, it seems like the picture of, like I said, picture of Dorian Gray. It seems like he's being, I mean, nobody's putting him in jail for his crimes, but they sure as hell have inflicted on him one hell of an illness.
So,
I mean, the guy's been a crook forever. I mean, and of course, nobody asked him the question, was your son telling the truth when he told his daughter that for 30 years he's been giving you half his salary? Do you disagree with your son?
Yeah.
No, and by the way, in case you want to doubt it, here's the text right here. Would you like to read it, or shall we get out the hard drive and show it to you? Or how about when he described himself on? Let me play the tape for you, where he described himself as the a partner of the spy chief of China. Now, let me play the tape for you. See if you recognize Hunter's voice. And you exposed all kinds of classified material relating to China to him, didn't you? And you want Trump to go to jail. Maybe you should go first. I mean, this wasn't a I mean, this was about as Ted. When I was mayor, I would have considered this like a day off. This press conference. I had a press conference a day.
Yeah.
Very often 6 a week because I do it on a Saturday too or a Sunday.
Big NATO you have a big conference in town. You're, hobnobbing, rubbing elbows, yapping with all these leaders.
I would do sometimes more than one press.
Yeah, but it's a day off for you.
No, but
because you were a real leader. You're a real mayor.
I enjoyed the mental competition. It kept me sharp.
Oh, you loved going back and forth with the reporters.
I felt like I was in court again. It was like, and also,
well,
there's nothing like having to perform
live
to make you study. So I had to be prepared every day.
People are watching you.
I had to know what was going on in the city. I couldn't get lazy. Now I'm not lazy anyway, but I'm not Obama and I'm not Adams.
Especially as a Republican mayor, the press was actually watching you.
Yeah,
unlike these Democrats.
Yeah, I mean the only good mayors in New York have been Republican mayors. LaGuardia or me. Koch to some extent, but Koch endorsed Reagan. Koch endorsed me.
In 2008?
In 93.
Oh, in 93. As for mayor?
Yeah.
Oh, he did not endorse Deakins.
He did not. He did not because he loved the city. He didn't love me all that much, but he loved the city. After all, I put most of his people in jail.
But not him.
But but I have to, not him because he wasn't a crook. He was just absent-minded. He was off in some other world.
And
always off in a massive ego world.
That is the other mayor people remember.
Everybody around him was stealing like hell.
But he's one of the memorable mayors in New York.
He was, and if he had limited himself to 2 terms, he would have had a much better legacy. His third term was a disaster. That's when I caught all the crooks.
And that's when he was doing that. He wanted to run for higher office.
If you really want to know what happened is, I think he became very depressed when he lost the governor's race to Mario Cuomo, because the two of them were.
By the way, who would choose governor over mayor in New York City? I think being a mayor in New York would be way, way more.
But he wanted to be. I mean,
but when you're already mayor, you got this. Then I get it. For him, it's different. But if you were to choose one, there's a reason you ran for mayor, not governor, right?
He had won the mayoralty for a second term.
So you already had that under his
He had a
belt.
real big win.
Yeah.
Cuomo, he had defeated Cuomo in the mayoral primary years earlier, and he started off ahead. He started off winning.
And governor of New York's it's considered one of the big governors.
But he made a terrible mistake. He decided never to. He would come back to New York every night, campaigning, and he basically said something like, "Who would ever want to sleep in upstate New York?"
Well,
so you start off with there being a rivalry between downstate and upstate, and everybody thinking New Yorkers think they're so much better than everybody else. New Yorkers meaning New York City people.
Yeah.
And then he just plays right into it with that statement. And I think he started off, unlike most mayors, fairly popular
up there. Yeah.
And I was always popular upstate because I was a Republican. So
yeah.
It was easier.
Yeah.
Although probably not as popular if I had been a Republican from upstate.
Yeah.
But certainly more popular than a Democrat from downstate.
Yeah.
And my biggest strength, believe it or not, was in the suburbs.
Oh, that makes total sense.
The suburbs, my approval rating was always 10 to 15.
People in the suburbs identify themselves, right? I don't know, maybe New York's different, but they identify themselves as New Yorkers, right?
In the suburbs.
And care about the city.
If you included southern Connecticut and northern New Jersey, it would have been a real wipeout. Because they also, but they're not within the jurisdiction of New York State.
Yeah, if only there was if the Port Authority was a
but
state.
The well anyway, we're going to have to study that later, because I think the well anyway is the transition word that he had for tonight, which indicates where his memory ran out. And I was warned 4 years ago, even in preparing Donald Trump for the debate, by a gerontologist, is it? That they usually have these words like that thing, or because their mind has gone blank, so they'll only remember one thing. So he went through a phase where he must have said "well anyway" about 5 times.
Anyways, yeah, that's his thing.
Well, anything. Well, anyway.
Well, anyway, that's his shtick.
It's new though. I mean, he's done other ones too. He's done other ones.
Other words, but he's done it for a while where he has something in his mind when he loses his train of thoughts.
Yeah, that thing.
Folks.
Yeah.
Anyways, folks.
Yeah. So.
Well, in the interest of fairness, Mayor, and because you refuse to put any sort of misinformation out there, you are so committed to the truth. We have the full clip of Biden earlier today.
Yeah, I want to see the
with
correction. I mean, that's only
Zelensky
fair.
and correction. Now, keep in mind,
I believe it's important to see this correct. It'll tell you if this fits into the diagnosis of dementia, or it's a normal mistake. Look, a person who has dementia is going to make normal mistakes too, just like you and me. That because you have dementia doesn't mean, unless you're completely in the last stages of it, that you're walking around, every single thing you say is idiotic. You go have periods of, in his particular case, he has periods of relative lucidity, and then boom. Well, anyway. Boom. Well, anyway. Okay, let's see.
Here we go.
Over to the president of Ukraine, who has as much courage as he has determination. Ladies and gentlemen, President Putin. President Putin. You can beat President Putin. President Zelensky. I'm so focused on beating Putin, we got to worry about it. Anyway.
His mind corrected that. Nobody helped him. It worked. His mind was working there, and it wasn't working later on when he said Trump.
Okay, I see what you're saying. That was a slip up. That was a slip up.
If he were normal, always, right? Then when he said Vice President Trump, he would have done just what he just did there. That's what a normal mind does, what he just did.
Made a mistake and corrected.
But I mean, 80% of the time when he's talking, he's normal. 20% or 10%, he's wacky. Now, if you want to take a look at where he does Trump again, you'll see the difference. And then it almost seems like even at the end, when he's asked a question, he doesn't really know what the guy's talking about. Like he doesn't remember that he screwed up the Trump thing when the reporter, it was an hour earlier, but God forbid that he should remember an hour earlier.
Yeah, especially as our commander in chief. Here we go, back to the Trump one.
To be vice president, that I think she was not qualified to be president. I wouldn't have picked Vice President Trump to be vice president, that I think she was not qualified to be president.
So you look at his face, you can see no recognition there, right? You see nothing in his face that tells him, oh boy, like before. Like, oh boy.
I stepped into this time.
That's the difference. And that's why if he took a cognitive test, I don't know what his score would be, but it would be really low. There's something seriously wrong with him, and unfortunately, we're stuck with him as president.
So in your opinion, Mayor...
So I don't know if we have to beat a dead horse, do we?
Well, did that press conference expedite him exiting this race?
Yeah.
Or did it get by him more time?
The Democrats are going to be... Well, what is motivating the Democrats? Has nothing to do with the good of the country. They'd have gotten rid of him a year ago. Or, as I said, Clooney would have come out against him on June 15th when he saw all these things that made him so disturbed. He's perfectly willing to keep him in there as this completely non-compass mentis rag because he thought he could beat Trump. The minute he figured out he can't beat Trump because the cover-up was uncovered, now he's against him. So all this does is to say, how many more of these can he do? I mean, how many? So the next press conference, what is going to confuse the United States and Russia, or think he's in Mars, or tell us about his conversation with dead people, or? I mean, this has been going on for four or 5 years, Ted. There's no reason to think that between now and Election Day, what you saw tonight doesn't happen 30 more times.
That's right.
And could tonight have even been worse?
I think it hurts him, Mayor. Because those gaffes are what people are going to take away from it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, sure,
well, the gaffes are dramatic.
I know.
The whole presentation was pathetic.
Yeah.
The whole presentation. I mean, since affect can be interpreted, it's harder to be definitive. But if you were talking to a real doctor, he would tell you I could spot him a mile away. I mean, I could spot him. I mean, if you've ever been in a nursing home, you can. I knew he was like this before he ran for office, just by looking at him, because I know him.
And I think we're starting to see what happened in 2020. Sure, it's worse now, but it was probably bad then. As you pointed out, he was able to hide it because of COVID. So he did get to stay in his basement, and he didn't.
And it probably wasn't as.
And it wasn't as bad.
You know, it only gets worse. It doesn't get better with time.
If
So all that time does here is make it worse, which means could he get by between now and November and it doesn't get any worse? Yeah. Is it going to get any better? No. And it's probably going to get worse. Now, this is just me on my own. This I haven't checked out with a doctor, including Dr. Maria. But I do seem to recall that in all these situations, pressure makes it worse. In other words, if you were diagnosed with dementia, middle stage dementia, and you haven't gone over the cliff yet, and you don't know who you are. At the same time, it's easily recognizable with things like, Vice President Trump, and you don't recognize you're saying that, or you think you gave your uncle a medal that you never gave him, and he was dead for 7 years when you think you did it. It could remain that way for a while, or it could get worse. But usually they would tell you, relax, don't work as hard, or don't work at all. Keep yourself out of pressured situations. Now, I have to assume that the pressure he's been under has made him worse than he was even for the debate. He actually seemed to me, in terms of his affect, to be worse than the debate. He seemed even more out of it than he did at the debate. Certainly by the end. By the end, he was like a boxer.
Yeah.
In the with the legs getting weak.
His staff was sweating
In the 11th and the 12th round. I think if he went 2 or 3 questions more.
Yeah, he didn't have much more in him.
He'd have gone right off. He got right off the cliff. Even when he was answering that shouted out question about Trump, he didn't know what the hell he was doing.
Not a clue. So what if yeah, I mean, we're beating a dead horse.
So I do think this is going to increase. So put yourself in the place of a Democrat, right?
Yeah.
You want to beat Trump. What would you do? If you were a Democrat and you wanted to beat Trump for whatever reason, some altruistic reason or some horrible reason or what, but your whole mission in life is, I mean, you basically lie your ass off to beat Trump because you did already. You covered all this up for years. Would you want to ride him to the finish line, or do you want to give somebody else a shot as a better chance of beating Trump? What do you think?
I think they have to, if the goal is to beat Trump, see these members of, so it is a great question, Mayor, and how you framed it, right?
Isn't that the way Democrats are going to think of it?
Yeah, but because you have members of Congress. What about the House and the Senate? So these members of Congress and Senate on the Democrat side, they're going back and hearing from their constituents.
I mean, they just don't have the
want them out.
They don't have the guts to say.
Yeah, exactly. They want them out.
They all want them out. They'd love to, I mean, I would think. Look, what do the polls say? The polls say that about 60 to 70% of Democrats don't think you should run. It's the regular rank and file Democrats.
Yeah.
So it has to even be higher among the professionals.
Yeah. And so they are sick and tired, and this is going to continue. They're sick and tired of having to answer about Joe Biden. And then because they know they're lying to their constituents when they say, oh, well, if Joe wants to stay in.
Be an issue between now and election.
Yeah. They got to get rid of
And
him.
at any time, he could get worse.
And you're right.
There's no chance it gets better. This isn't one of those things like
Like a cold.
when they say Obama lost the first debate or Reagan lost the first debate. They came back and resoundingly won the second. He's not going to resoundingly win anything. He can be lucky if he can get to a second debate. By then, he may not be able to get out of his bedroom.
And I do think the Democrats, from their perspective, and I don't know how, if they could have an open convention, sure, it would be messy, but for them, it does give them an opportunity to come up with something exciting, capture the imagination of the entire nation with a actual convention that I've never experienced in my lifetime. And you really, I mean, you did when you were a kid.
Yeah, those conventions don't generate. Those conventions end up usually, the more contested the convention, the less chance you win.
So, okay, so maybe.
And particularly, they made a terrible mistake. Their convention is about 2 weeks later than it normally would be. So they've cut. I mean, they're virtually, their convention is on the eve of the election.
And in Chicago.
And when you think of early voting, people are going to start voting 2 weeks after the convention.
That's right. And you're right. It's going to be ugly already. I mean, there's a huge Palestinian population.
I don't think they can stand. I mean, I know they like this mini convention, mini primary thing. I don't think they can stand it. So if I were a Democrat, I'd go with Harris.
Interesting. So you come out with more experience. I may be a little bit more. Yeah.
I'd say, look, we don't have a great chance of winning. Replacing our president at this late stage, how the hell is that not going to hurt us?
Yeah.
A lot of people are going to think we're covering up. The Republicans are going to kill us with that. Trump seems to be on his best behavior, a different kind of Trump than we dealt with before. And it may even be these democracy things are going to start turning around on him now. The way they overplayed their hand with January 6th. They overplayed their hand with lawfare. They're overplaying their hand with the people that don't like Trump, don't like his personality. I do not believe they think he's a dictator, really. They're trying to force a scenario.
Yeah.
They think he's a vainglorious guy, you know?
Yeah.
That's, but I don't know what you would base his being a dictator on.
That's weird. That's very
He never
weird.
did anything to suggest that he was a dictator, much less than they do. I mean, if they didn't have this history of doing all this crap, maybe they could get away with it. But very quickly starts to turn around on them. And right now, I think the polls are starting to show that for a while, they were trusting Biden more to protect our democracy. And now they're beginning to show that they trust Trump more, which means that even that is turning around on them. So
I think you're right.
What?
And the Harris thing.
If you are headed for sure defeat, don't you have to throw a Hail Mary pass?
Yeah,
of course. You're on the 10-yard line. You're losing by 4 points. There's one more play left in the game. Do you give it to your running back and let him run to the line, or do you just take the ball and throw it to somebody new?
And you're onto something with the Kamala Harris thing, Mayor, because you also know the media will quickly turn a 180 and start glorifying Kamala Harris.
Revolt.
Yeah.
They can't risk with the gains that Trump has made in the Hispanic community, which I think are real. He could win the Hispanic vote. The gains he's made in the Jewish community, which I think are real. They can't afford even a 10, 20% reduction in the black vote. They can't afford it. And they get it. And maybe Harris gives them a chance. Certainly if they overlook Harris, whatever Trump was going to do, he's going to double.
Yep. They will kill themselves with a portion of that community.
If they overlook Harris.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think you're right. The more we think this through as a Dem.
Which better are the other people? I mean,
they're unknown.
Is the Prince of Bel-Air better than...
Is that for him? I'm moving forward. He's the Prince of Bel-Air. I love that.
Yeah, the Prince of Bel-Air.
That's a good one.
Does he really, or a Witless? I mean,
Whitmer is so unknown at the national level.
Witness we could cream for being part of the cover-up. I mean, she basically is telling us that Biden's fine.
And that fake kidnapping plot, I can't wait to pull that one out again.
But I mean,
that was a fake kidnapping.
Plus, if to get to her, you got to step all over Kamala, right?
They can't. They won't do it. They can't do it. They don't have the guts to do it, and you know the way they play identity politics.
So I'll tell you what I think. I think probably the shrewdest of them, in terms of shrewd, is the Prince of Bel-Air. I bet he doesn't put himself in it. He doesn't want to get nominated, stepping on Kamala's grave and then losing. He's finished forever. I mean,
if he comes in and loses.
If I were his advisor,
stay away.
Man, chance of being president 4 years from now, 8 years from now.
Stay away.
Stay away right now.
Don't even go to.
Let her run. Let her run.
Let Kamala?
Let Kamala run.
Yeah.
That's
a good point. Whitmer too, right? All these people. Why get involved?
The chances of her winning are probably less than 50%, and the chance of her making some mistakes that are deadly are pretty strong. I mean, you think about her word salads, and people can be much more sensitive to that now. I mean, she starts with, Ukraine's a small country and Russia's a big country, and they're next to each other, and she does one of these sentences and it's over with. You know, what did she say?
I think you're right. They'd end up with a second-rate candidate if it wasn't. I mean, I look at them all as that way, but from their perspective, you're right. The top people are going to wait this out. They're going to end up with, but somebody will take will take it on, right? I mean, it's a chance to be the nominee of the Democrat Party, right? There's only one person every 4 years.
You could have created somebody. You can't do that now.
Yeah,
and
they screwed this up in that respect.
I would think she's their best chance. In fact, I'd much rather, for the good of my party, run against him, or even have somebody step all over her and get put in there and watch the party fracture. I mean, I'd love to see what do they call it? A mini primary and real convention. All that'll do. I mean, that'll make Chicago in 68 look tame. If they start going at each other for the nomination.
We got to be there, Mayor. In one way or another, we got to cover the deal. Yeah, there's probably no way we get. We would be one of the last people they let in, literally. Yeah. We could go, hey, we've done it before. I'm not going to say where. We have gone undercover with you, and we've made it right in the middle of these rallies.
At every Democrat convention since 2004, except the last, the COVID one.
The COVID one.
But I was at the one in Philadelphia with Hillary when she kept out the Philadelphia police.
Yeah.
And discovered it. I was at the one where he put up the Roman temples. King Obama,
Denver,
where he put up the Roman temple so he could come out like the prince.
So weird. What a weird guy. And by the way, the Democrat, it's in Chicago this year.
Only reason we might not go to Chicago, and not get a shot. Jesus.
That's the other thing. Why are they picking Chicago?
Ooh.
Why that was dumb.
Wacko.
Brandon Johnson.
Johnson blaming it on Nixon.
Of all people and all, I mean, he couldn't even blame a modern day Republican. He had to reach back to Nixon.
Years ago, Nixon had a chance to get at the root causes, and he stopped Johnson. First
of boys between the ages of 10 and 19 being either victims or the perpetrators. So, yeah, it is personal. Black death has been unfortunately accepted in this country for a very long time. We had a chance 60 years ago to get at the root causes, and people mocked President Johnson. And we ended up with Richard Nixon.
He dropped out of the race over Vietnam, not over the Great Society. We didn't know how crooked and how dishonest and how damaging to the blacks the Great Society was going to be. You know, which leads to Malcolm X saying the worst enemy of the black people is the white liberal. And what he's talking about is the dependency that was created by the Great Society. When I was dealing with it, we were into the second and third generation of dependency. You didn't have anybody within miles that knew anybody went to work. And that's why I did workfare and turned it around, which can be done because these are really good people. If they have the right influence, he's right. You got to get at the root causes. One of the root causes was the Great Society. But I mean, to blame it on Nixon, gee.
Like something.
I mean, Nixon had a pretty moderate, if not slightly left, social policy. Remember, Daniel Patrick Moynihan was in his administration. Because Daniel Patrick Moynihan, they accused of being a racist because he said the problem was the breakup of the black family. And they accused him of being a racist. Probably one of the smartest guys to ever be in the Senate. So big boy press conference. He turns out to be a little boy. Clooney, big phony, massive phony. June 15th. His whole article is based on his observation of him June 15th. He waits until after the debate, after everybody else has knifed the guy in the back. And now he tells us that he's too dangerous to be president. What about the 2.5 weeks in between? When you were willing to ride it and play along with the cover-up, you and all those other jackasses, or whatever they are, they're much worse than jackasses. Julia Roberts and who the hell else was there? The usual Rob Reiner, and I mean, they're willing to go along with the cover-up as long as it'll help them defeat Trump, and then when it won't, they pull the cover. I mean, and no one ever thinks about the country. Gee. Well, the RNC convention is right on top of us. It's going to be next Monday. We're going to be covering it on Frank's speech with Emerald Robinson and Dr. Maria and a whole host of people. Oh, of course, with
Mike Lindell, yeah, and the mayor. You'll be a big part of their coverage.
And we'll be able to focus on the policies and programs that get our country through this. I think Trump has been very, very good at laying those out in his rallies. They're about the only substantive thing we have anymore. And it looks like Dana White is going to introduce him on the night of the convention. Mike DeSantis is going to be one of the main speakers. Ron DeSantis is going to be one of the main speakers. Everyone thinks that Trump had a little giveaway with Vance the other day when he was asked if he would kind of like hold it against Vance that he has facial hair. And he said he looks like a young Abe Lincoln. That's a pretty nice thing to say, right?
Yeah, that's about as good as it gets. That's funny. But I love that. I would guess that too, that the president isn't a big fan of facial hair. So somebody
is what he said.
That's funny.
His ex-wife, Marla Maples, has very fulsomely endorsed him and says she'll do anything she can to get him elected.
Because there's Marla.
He was a great president.
There she is.
So I think that's a heck of a thing. I mean, when you look at when you compare
that's Dana White.
Compare him and Biden as family men and their families and the stability of their families. My gosh, I just don't think Donald Trump would fail to meet with his granddaughter. and cast her into outer darkness the way the first stepmother and the bum in the White House have done.
Crazy.
Meanwhile, while Biden is playing the fiddle, whatever the hell he's doing. Well, anyway. So it looks like Bibi had a pretty good shot on Hamas. Now, it is true that they claim they hit a school or civilians were killed, but they were all warned to get out of there. And all we're relying on for that is a group of terrorists. In fact, all these numbers and everything else, we just rely on a group of terrorists. So I have no idea if that's the case or not, but I do know they've taken out some real Hamas big shots. And at the same time, they're cleaning up, they've gone back to Gaza City to get rid of some more of the Hamas people. They hit a UN building, which of course have been turned over to the terrorists. That UN probably collects rent from the terrorists or donates the building. The UN is like almost a part of Hamas. So they wiped out one of those buildings in Gaza City in a way going back to where they had been before, because Bibi and the Israeli people want to stick to the original game plan, which Biden, I don't know if he even lied, if he even understands it. Originally, the whole idea of this, the plan was to wipe out Hamas. Now, in deference to Biden's ally, Iran, we're no longer on that game plan, but Israel is. So basically, we've changed allies here. Our allies are Hamas, and seeing what we can do to salvage as much of Hamas as possible. Whereas Netanyahu wants to eliminate as much of Hamas as possible. And I step back as an American and say, I like that because Hamas wants to kill Americans. Gee, that sounds pretty good for America, which is why Biden's on the other side. Isn't that weird that it always works out that way? And you wonder why? Well, read Jack Posobiec's book about communism, and you'll find out why. Also, the idea that he's got it all solved with Israel and Hamas, they don't agree at all. Hamas says no exchange of hostages, no anything, unless there's an agreement that that's the end of hostilities. In other words, Israel can't say, okay, we'll take 2 weeks off and then come in and beat the crap out of us again. Israel says just the opposite. Yeah, we'll take a time out, and we want our people back. But if we haven't gotten rid of them by the time we're going to go back and get rid of them, we said we're going to get rid of them, and we are going to get rid of them. And they haven't changed. Hamas hasn't changed its pledge to destroy Israel. So there is no agreement, Featherbrain. That whole thing about you've got an agreement is just ridiculous. And what you've done for the world. I mean, do you have any idea? I mean, when you became vice president, president, which I'm sure you can't remember, the world was relatively at peace. All those people that died in Ukraine, both Ukrainian and Russian, were still alive. All those people in Afghanistan you got killed were all alive. All those people in Israel, Palestinian otherwise, Israeli, were alive. They all were alive, and they weren't at war with each other. They didn't like each other, but they weren't at war with each other. You now have us in more hostilities than we have been involved in, not directly, but very materially, in 2 parts of the world, which have no plan You were given several opportunities tonight to explain your plan. You didn't even come close. You just did well anyway, and well anyway, and well anyway, and talked about your father and who the hell knows what you talked about. But you didn't talk about how you propose to have Ukraine win. You never even answered the question about whether you're going to let up on the limitations you put on them, except to say you're going to continue because you don't want them to have 2,000-pound bombs. Oh, I'm not sure that was Israel. You don't want to have 2,000-pound bombs. In the case of Ukraine, you don't want them to shoot into Russia. Then you seem to think the only alternative is to hit Moscow. And there are a lot of places before Moscow where they're attacking Ukraine from that they could attack that you're not letting them do. Because you don't want a wider war with Russia. Now, maybe that's a good idea. But then don't get people killed on the idea that you're going to defeat Russia. You're not going to defeat Russia unless you engage them in a way that risks a wider war with them. I don't know, does that would probably strain his logic and he'd start saying, well, anyway. That'd be too tough for him. But you get it, right? I mean, what Ukraine is doing right now is not winning the war. At best, it's a stalemate with actually Russia over the last 6 months making slight minor increases. And you have to assume in the days leading up to a possible change of administration, they're going to do everything they can to maximize the territory they have. And there's nothing on the board. Well, maybe the F-16s, if he lets them use them, might stop Putin from gaining more territory. Might. It sure as heck isn't going to reverse the war. Plus, you're not allowing them to use them in Russia. We're not even sure you're going to allow them to use them against Russian targets in Ukraine. So what do they use them against? For defensive purposes. Well, defensive purposes means we're in a war without end, which Democrats love, like Vietnam. But neither Zelensky nor you have explained to us how we're going to win this war. You've explained to us how we're going to constantly be in it, and there's going to be plenty of cash for both of you to kick around with each other. Nor have you talked about the fact that Zelensky is sitting on top of unbelievable amount of corruption in this country. And how do you propose to get him into NATO until they fix that corruption? Don't you have to fix the corruption before you get into NATO? To fix the corruption, we got to uncover everything you did. I mean, they keep you out of NATO if you're corrupt. Well, Ukraine is corrupt. The last president of Ukraine took $100 million or more in bribes. A lot of those same people are still around. There's no accountability for the couple of $100 billion that you've got. It is kind of strange. You got that much money and in about a year and a half, you haven't made any movement. If somebody goes and look at that, you might find that a lot of that money was taken. In fact, that is more logically the case in your country than the other. So after a year of delay, we sent the F-16s to Ukraine, which is why this whole thing with Ukraine is an absolute sacrilege. We're just wasting lives for nothing. I mean, the best you can say is he wants to maintain the status quo. Otherwise, he would have given him the F-16s and trained them much quicker, much faster. He would have allowed him. There's a lot more intrusion you can do into Russia before you get to Moscow, jackass. I don't know. Are the generals that he has, Ted, as stupid as he is? I mean, because he doesn't make these. Who makes these stupid decisions? I mean, it goes right back to the very beginning when he takes the troops out first, and then he leaves the civilians to get slaughtered.
Yeah.
Doesn't somebody say, "Hey, jackass, you do it the other way around"?
Yep. Crazy.
So we shipped them the 500-pound bombs to Israel so they can take out some of the tunnels, but we haven't given the 2,000-pound bombs so Hamas will be able to maintain itself in the really deep tunnels. That's really good. Let's see if we can keep Hamas around. I mean, they want to kill Americans, so I guess we're on their side, right? The House today or yesterday passed resolution 216 to 198 on the extraordinary proposition that non-citizens should not be allowed to vote. We got to actually pass a law that says that. You got to actually pass a law that says you're not going to let non-citizens of the United States vote in the United States. I mean, it isn't like self-evident that in order to have a country, people have to be citizens of it in order to vote. They have to be devoted to it. They have to take an allegiance to it. They have to have an interest in it. They have to have a knowledge of it. What do you do? Who voted against it? All Democrats. 198 Democrats in the House of Representatives believe that non-citizens should vote in your elections. And you're going to vote for them? What, are you born to some other country? I would think, Republican or Democrat, we should all agree that in order to vote, you got to have a stake in the country, which is citizen. You're part of this place. It really is critical for a country like ours that you understand it also. A democracy, when we say democracy, we don't mean rule of the majority. We mean rule of the majority under a very strict group of laws that protect the minority. That's really what we mean by democracy. Because otherwise, the Soviet Union was a democracy. So was Nazi Germany. The majority can become a tyranny. In fact, it's one of the predictions our founding fathers made for the possible demise of this country, a tyranny of the majority, which is why we have a Bill of Rights, which have been thrown out the window by the fascist Bidenistas. The Baldwin trial began today. I'm really interested in hearing the testimony on how the gun went off without anybody pressing the trigger, which is, of course, the whole basis for the Democrat position on gun control, that guns, commit crimes. Biden got himself all upset tonight. I thought he was going to have like a stroke when toward the very end when he said something about guns,
Pissed.
He probably does believe they go off by themselves. Has Baldwin taken a position yet on him? He was going to leave the country, in 2000 when Bush got elected.
Yeah, never left.
Yeah, man, that girl would be alive if he left. Right?
Yeah.
The one that he killed.
Yeah.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. The one that the wind moved the trigger and shot her.
Oh, yeah, he didn't. It wasn't his fault.
No, he didn't. Ted, I thought he said he didn't pull the trigger.
I think at one point he was claiming that. Yeah. I don't know how.
I would think there was
He's lying. Are you allowed to lie like that?
This happened in where? Utah?
New Mexico.
New Mexico. Okay. I thought, lucky it wasn't Arizona, because I remember at an Arizona Diamondbacks World Series game, a wind keeping a Yankee home run from going out that would have given us the 2001 World Series, damn it.
Or the gust
they opened up in the 6th or 7th inning, they opened up the top.
Oh, you're not kidding.
The wind was serious, and I even predicted
that's going to change things.
To my son, this could hurt us. And it did. One of the Yankees, I think it was a right-handed hitter, hit it the opposite field. And first of all, it was a great catch by the center fielder. But it would have gone out had the wind been blowing to right field. But it started reversed and started blowing in. Wow. Little things like that can determine World Series and wars. Everyone, let me tell you this, because you're not going to hear it on the communist networks. Iran is funding the protesters. the ones that were let out by all the Soros prosecutors. Once again, like they did during 2020, in all of the riots for the guy with the statue, Floyd. You know, doesn't Floyd have a statue somewhere?
He has a mural. I don't know about a statue. I mean,
Oh,
if he'll
he has
have
a
a statue. He probably does. It's probably
Because
done.
I mean,
He's a hero.
yeah. I mean, he died of overdose, and had a record as long as your arm. But he also led to people dying, property being burned,
All those
millions of
peaceful
dollars in
protests.
damage, and everybody set free, with Kamala Harris getting them out on bail. The last cabinet meeting this jerk-off had was October 2023. No wonder they can't use the 25th. They don't get to see him. The 25th Amendment says, well, the vice president's got to take the initiative. Yeah, good luck for that one. The 25th Amendment.
Well, if she wants to be president, she should do it.
Yeah, but she won't do that.
Kamala Harris will never be president. This is her only shot at being the nominee, right? She will never win the nomination.
The cabinet is not going to I think it's only a majority of the cabinet. But if they send a letter, to the Congress saying that the president is incapacitated, he's automatically removed for 4 or 6 days, and she becomes acting president.
And then the president has to adjudicate.
No, president has to write the hearing.
But the letter, this is the part where it has to be 2/3 or 3/4 or something.
Then it has to be 2/3 of the Congress has to agree to remove the president.
So but even that letter to be even for that letter to come to be, I think the letter has to be a certain number of members of
I'll check
a majority.
I believe a majority. It can be a majority.
Yeah, we'll look into this in tomorrow night maybe.
I think we should look at it now. I don't want to leave you with a that's a big point.
So while he looks at that, let's play a short clip. Here is Stinkin' Blinken, Jake Sullivan, and Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin, and you do see Karine Jean-Pierre's face here. Here is their reaction when their boss refers to Kamala Harris as Vice President Trump.
Vice President Trump to be vice president, that I think she was not qualified to be president. So let's start there. Number one. The fact is that the consideration is I wouldn't have picked Vice President Trump to be vice president, that I think she was not qualified to be president. So let's start there. Number one. The fact is that the consideration is I wouldn't have picked Vice President Trump to be vice president, that I think she was not qualified to be president. So let's start there. Number one. The fact is that the consideration is.
Is that little piss hand?
That was Jake Sullivan who put his hand up. Yeah,
piss hand.
That's right. So as the mayor, so what the question is, let us know in the comments if they have that.
Okay, here. This is section 4. Whenever the vice president and either a majority of either the principal officers of the executive departments, that's the cabinet, right?
Yeah.
Or of such other body as Congress may by law provide, transmit to the president pro tempore of the Senate and the Speaker of the House of Representatives their written declaration that the president is unable to discharge the powers and duties of his office. Okay, so let's say they get that, okay? Let's say a majority of the cabinet writes a letter saying that President Biden is unable to discharge the powers and duties of his office. Written declaration. The vice president shall immediately assume the powers and duties of the office as acting president. So if she gets such a letter, and that letter can be either a majority of the cabinet or the Congress, I would assume they could do this by majority vote, right? Can provide a body to investigate the president. The Congress can say, we're appointing these 7 people, okay? of such other body as Congress may by law provide. So I would think the Congress could appoint 7 people to assist the vice president. And if a majority of those 7 with the vice president determine that the president is unable to discharge the powers and duties of the office of president, those powers and duties will be assumed by the vice president. The letter changes the status. Thereafter, when the president transmits to the president pro tempore of the Senate, the Speaker of the House, his written declaration that no inability exists, he shall resume the powers and duties of his office. So right now, I would assume you'd have to put reasons in, but just a conclusory declaration would be enough. Meaning, if a majority of the cabinet and Kamala signed a letter saying he can't carry out his functions, she becomes the acting president. He then writes a letter back saying, I am able to carry out my functions. The minute he submits a written declaration that no inability exists, he shall resume the powers and duties of his office, unless the vice president and a majority of either the principal officers of the executive department or of such other body as Congress may by law provide transmits within 4 days to the president pro tempore of the Senate and the Speaker of the House their written declaration that the president is unable to discharge the powers and duties of his office. Thereupon, Congress shall decide the issue, assembling within 48 hours for that purpose, if not in session. If the Congress, within 21 days after receipt of the latter written declaration, or if Congress is not in session within 21 days after Congress is required to assemble, determines by 2/3 vote of both houses that the president is unable to discharge the powers and duties of his office, the vice president shall continue to discharge the same as acting president. Otherwise, the president shall resume the powers and duties of his office. Here's the little thing that left open here. If the president, the vice president, and the majority of the cabinet say he's unable to carry out his duties, he then writes back within 4 days. So he then writes back and says, I am able to carry out my duties. It doesn't say who the acting president is.
Well, it would be the vice president.
Well,
or are you saying it might jump to?
If the president contests it, the powers and duties of unless the vice president, the majority of either the principal officers.
Thanks for joining us.
So,
the mayor is giving you a legal lesson.
When he writes back that he's able to carry out the duty, he shall resume the powers and duties of his office, unless the vice president and a majority of the officers transmit within 4 days to the president pro tempore of the Senate and the Speaker of the House their written declaration the president is unable to discharge the powers and duties of his office. Thereupon, Congress shall decide the issue. The question is, during that period, who is the president? It seems to me the president is the president. The minute he says he's okay, he becomes the president again.
And then it's the onus is on Congress. If they want to get
him out, they got to get a 2/3 vote of the Congress.
Okay, that makes okay. So we're still a ways away, Mayor, but
that's not going to happen. I mean, but you might as well know how the law operates. A little constitutional.
What if he does totally lose it, and Jill and Hunter are still insisting he stays? I don't think it's fair to say that it's not. I mean, it's very unlikely. But Mayor, how is it getting this far? Right? I mean,
well, you're right. I mean, if he really goes to war with his party, you mean?
Yeah.
Well, I would think then they'd remove him.
Or do you think he'll quit before then?
I think he'll quit before then.
This guy's got he doesn't have any real courage, right? There's no real. This guy doesn't have a real fight in him.
but
maybe for himself, right?
But he's crazy, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
crazy or just out of it. He
I
is.
really believe he's mentally ill.
Yes, he's.
I mean, I don't think it's just at this point. I think it's way beyond dementia. I think the man, when you consider what a pathologically insane liar he is, at times he's delusional. He thinks he sees dead people, or I mean, why should we just ignore all that? I mean, I think the guy is crazy.
So all in all, not a good day for Biden.
Today was terrible. It would be better off if he didn't do it. Just like it was better off if he didn't debate.
So what are you looking for here as we continue to wait to see
more Democrats will now ask him to step in?
And do you expect this to happen? Does this move up your timeline before or during the convention? What are you thinking, Mayor? In your expert opinion, we all have an opinion on this.
Since there's no precedent for this, and these people have never been put to this test before, all they've ever done is torture me and Trump and all of us. The smartest thing for them to do would be to agree on Harris and calm this down quickly and work on a vice president for the convention. Get him to gracefully bow out, turn it all over to her. I think if he decides he's not going to run, he has to resign. I don't think you can maintain the fiction that he's incapable of running, but he's capable of running the government. Right?
Yeah, I think you're right.
There are two wars going on. And there is always the risk that China will invade Taiwan, right?
Right.
And that's not a fictitious risk. I mean, I think that's been one of the things that kind of holds it back a little, because you can't say, okay, you're incapable of being the Democratic nominee, but it's okay for you to carry out the duties of President of the United States.
Right.
You know, you're not good enough for the Democratic Party, but you're good enough for the United States. Right?
Right.
I think this is going to lead to him. And also, you put Harris in the best possible position of winning if you make a president.
Right.
Even if it is incumbent president for a short period.
Right.
So my prediction is that before, and I can't tell you how fast, but I think faster rather than longer, maybe sometime next week, to take the bounce away from Trump, right? He resigns. She takes over. She picks a vice president, which number one she sends to the Congress for confirmation, and number two she makes her running mate, right? Because let's look at, I mean, actually, the next person in succession is Johnson. If he resigns tomorrow, right, and she becomes the president, effectively the vice president is the Speaker of the House. And if, God forbid, she were to die, which can happen to anybody, any human being, then you have Johnson as the president. That's right. Right? And then Schumer. I mean, it's closer.
Crazy world.
I mean, Johnson's got to be sitting there thinking it's closer than you think.
We got to have a clock or some sort of, because look, I got to give Biden credit. He has been holding on. It looked like for a few moments the past 2 weeks, it looked like he was going to be able to dig in and hold on, right?
He shouldn't have had the press conference.
Yeah. This was a mistake, just like the debate was a mistake.
They'll just keep replaying Vice President Trump, Vice President Trump, Vice President Trump.
Yeah.
I mean, the rest of it you can analyze, you can go over. It was scary. I mean, had he not done Vice President Trump, he might have been able to skate by.
Yeah.
Might have.
Even though it was still bad, because the bar is so.
There was a lot. I mean, there was a lot of irrational talk and that constant repetition.
Yeah.
Of the catchphrase. I mean, all of that
is bad. It was full.
But maybe
kind of overcame it or powered through.
Yeah.
We're
going to be back. Who knows what's going to happen?
You just did a 2-hour press conference on this show. No script. You guys see there is no. He doesn't use a. I've been wanting to do
These are newspaper articles.
This is one. No, flip through that. Show them the stack. That's just one day. That's part of one day, by the way. That's part of one day.
Here's the stuff I saw.
We don't get, ladies and gentlemen, as you know, we don't. I mean, we've been now on for 3 straight hours, and he still has.
Nobody prepares this show except him and me.
That's right.
And
no,
Dr. Maria.
And no transcript, no teleprompter. I've actually wanted to.
It's the 3 of us and
our audience. We got
and our audience and then people we call up.
And our friends. We have a lot of good friends.
You know, people we call up and but I don't know. I don't know how you would do this if you didn't prepare it yourself. Would you have somebody tell you what to say?
Yes. A lot of people.
What do you want to watch me for? If I'm not that. I mean, if I were better looking, maybe, but then I could be like an actor, like George Clooney or something, right? But
You're famous for actually accomplishing something in life.
I'm not interested at all in what a silly actor has to say. He has. When I listen to people, I either listen because I have to. Like I listen to Harris, or I listen to them, even if they're on the other side, because they're people with experience, people with wisdom, people who have more knowledge about this than I do. So I'll listen to Ben, I'll listen to Putin, I'll listen to Xi. These are people with tremendous power. You got to try to figure out what they're doing and why they're doing it. But I'm going to listen to a guy who does movies that I don't even like. I don't even like his movies.
By the way, he is kind of overrated when we think about George Clooney. Why is he so famous?
What movie he's been in that I particularly like? Ocean's 11. I thought Frank Sinatra's movies were much better. I mean, they were
not even close. That's not even close.
A bunch of jerky, self-important little jackass.
That's right.
They're all about 4'4".
That's right.
It's that other guy that
Matt Damon.
Matt Damon.
Coons prefers Damon.
He's about 4'4". Matt Damon.
Let's see if I have that clip. Oh, I wish I had that one.
Oh, with Cooney? Did we play him yet?
We played it on the other show. I don't think I have it on this one, unfortunately.
Well, Coons.
Yeah, but that was good.
Likes Matt Damon better than Clooney?
Yeah, I have that somewhere. That was a good one. But you're right, Mayor, and the fact that they rely on
the Clooney movie that I like, the one where the World War II, the Nazi movie, when they were searching for the artworks.
National Treasure? No,
that was a that was different.
Searching for the Raiders of the Lost Ark.
No, that's
way back. Indiana Jones.
No, that's not Clooney. Clooney could never do that.
See, that's the thing. I don't even know the movie you're referring to because
too much of a wussy.
All the Kings, or like the 3 Kings or something. I think the point being, see, we can't even name it.
No, it wasn't that good, but it was. I mean, I'd watch that movie again.
Yeah.
That was a good movie.
Yeah,
but I was very disappointed in Ocean's 11 and why? First of all, you should leave it alone. I mean, you're not going to beat Frank Sinatra and Dean Martin and Sammy Davis Jr.
But it's interesting because growing up, right, when I thought of Ocean's 11, for me, it was. To me, I didn't know the other one before it. So until I got older, that was for me. It was
these silly jackasses,
dumb guys, not even that good. Looking back,
but that war movie was good, I have to say.
Yeah, and we're gonna end on this Chris Coons video, but I think President Trump said something alluding to the fact
some of these left-wing actors, I'll never say anything about De Niro not being a great actor. Completely out of his mind, but he's a great actor. I mean, the man is about as close to Marlon Brando as a modern actor in that he can do comedy, he can do drama, he can play a Sicilian, speaking Sicilian when he never spoke Sicilian. And Pacino gets very, very close to him as a great actor.
You think
a better actor, even.
Well,
I'll tell you why I think Pacino might be a better actor, because Pacino was also a Broadway actor. And I always give credit to people who are also Broadway actors.
Well, Chris Coons let's see who Chris Coons' favorite actor is.
Has really spent a lot of time with President Biden in person. I'm more of a Matt Damon guy than a George Clooney guy. They've said that. Now, I question whether George Clooney has really spent a lot of time with President Biden in person. I'm more of a Matt Damon guy than a George Clooney guy.
That's a real clown. treating Clooney important enough to say I'm a Matt Damon guy instead of a Clooney.
Yeah, as if that's like a thing that people
like
are
if
sitting
really
around.
Matt-
Yeah, good point,
I
Mayor.
mean, if I were defending, if this were Trump being attacked like that, I'd say, who gives a damn what George Clooney thinks? There's a good reason to vote for me. George Clooney doesn't like me.
But isn't that funny? Democrats think, okay, we're going to pull out the heavy hitters. We're going to pull out the heavy hitters of the party. George Clooney. What?
George Clooney with a wife who wants to put Netanyahu in jail.
Oh, you know what? That's a good point.
And you know, I might have said that. He's kind of pissed off because Biden's not paying enough attention to his stupid wife, who wants to put who thinks she's a prosecutor. Who wants to put Netanyahu in jail, but not Hamas. Well, maybe she doesn't want to put Hamas in jail. I think she may want to put both of them in jail. Well, in any event, we'll be back tomorrow. Hopefully, we won't be talking about movie actors. They don't even make good movies anymore, Ted. Come on.
Mayor, you're
last one we went
spot on.
We couldn't stand it. Last one I went to, I was looking at my cell phone.
Yeah. The last good movie we saw was Sound of Freedom, and that was made outside of Hollywood.
Oh.
Name the last Hollywood movie that was actually a good movie. And by the way, you can't include remakes or sequels. Every movie now, it's crazy.
Well, God forbid you should have some kind of uplifting, happy ending.
Oh yeah, they're all either just gratuitously violent or sex, and there's no real plot.
Let's watch a John Wayne movie tonight, okay?
All righty.
All right.
Sold.
Rio Bravo, or let's see, how about The Sands of Iwo Jima? That's a good movie. I think that's Richard Widmark.
Yeah, we'll find a good one.
Yeah.
All right.
You know, they were talking about Dean Martin the other day. I guess they did a special on Newsmax about Dean Martin. They're talking about the Young Lions. That was a great movie. That was about the Second World War. And Marlon Brando plays a German officer. Brando played a German officer. He played a Japanese guy in Sayonara. He played Julius Caesar. Not Julius Caesar. He played Mark Antony in Julius Caesar. And he played the two dumb clucks in On the Waterfront and Streetcar Named Desire. Hey, stand up! Hey, stand up! Stand up! And then he could do Mark Antony. Right?
Yes.
Well, that's an actor. Now, he was crazy as a loon. He was a left-wing crazy loon. But he's a great actor. I just don't think Clooney's a great actor. I think he's he was a pretty boy. We'll be back tomorrow night. We just can't let you go. It's been too interesting an evening watching that train wreck. Well, good night, President Biden and Vice President Trump. And I guess if he steps down, Donald J. Trump, you'll be the president. Right? I mean, according to the head of the Democratic Party, Trump is the vice president. He didn't even take it back. He got a chance. Man, breaking news. That'll be our show tomorrow. Breaking news, Donald Trump, vice president. Remember they wanted to make him Speaker of the House, Ted?
Yeah.
Imagine if they did. How scared they'd be now. They would never take him out and depend on Kamala living for the next 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Imagine, holy moly, suppose she became incapacitated. He made the president, she becomes incapacitated, and they could still make Trump, Speaker. The majority of the House could make him Speaker. Johnson could resign and name him Speaker. That'd scare the shit out of them. Ooh. Well, good night before I go crazy. Make a complete fool out of myself. Thank you, Ted. You did a great job tonight. It was a long night. We did
the long nights are often the best night.
Watched the second round. I mean, you think there'll be another round? I mean, we've had the debate where he completely disassembled. We had this one where he got knocked out in the first round, and the rest of it wasn't even worth it.
Oh God,
it's like Ingemar Johansson and Floyd Patterson.
All right.
Good evening. God bless the people of Israel. God bless the people of the United States, and of course, God bless America. bear the principle of common sense and rational discussion to the issues of our day. America was created at a time of great turmoil, tremendous disagreements, anger, hatred. There was a book written in 1776 that guided much of the discipline of thinking that brought to us the discovery of our freedoms, of our God-given freedoms. It was Thomas Paine's Common Sense, written in 1776, one of the first American bestsellers, in which Thomas Paine explained, by rational principles, the reason why these small colonies felt the necessity to separate from the Kingdom of Great Britain and the King of England. He explained their inherent desire for liberty, for freedom, freedom of religion, freedom of speech, the ability to select the people who govern them. And he explained it in ways that were understandable to all the people, not just the elite. Because the desire for freedom is universal. The desire for freedom adheres in the human mind, and it is part of the human soul. This is exactly the time we should consult our history. Look at what we've done in the past and see if we can't use it to help us now. We understand that our founders created the greatest country in the history of the world, the greatest democracy, the freest country, a country that has taken more people out of poverty than any country ever. All of us are so fortunate to be Americans. But a great deal of the reason for America's constant ability to self-improve is because we're able to reason, we're able to talk, we're able to analyze. We are able to apply